You know who's a great guy? Mike Carparelli. If you go to carparelliguitars.com, he'll send you some of the best guitar components money can buy. Or he'll build you an absolute soulmate of a guitar. I play a Carparelli. You should too. I want you to have this video for free. But if you've got $2 or $3 lying around and you can kick them over here, it helps me take time from my real job and do more of this. So find the link below, go to PayPal, select only the least of what you can afford, and just know that I'd really appreciate it. Okay, let's see what's happening with the bridge here. We're actually using 3 bars. Most of the fill occupies this middle bar, but of course we have the cymbal crash here, and we've actually got a note leading into that bar. So we're listening to these 3 bars here. So adding to the variation we made on the beat, we've got a flam at the beginning of this part. We're going to look at how to do that. And then we've got some snare and tom combinations. So we're going flam on the snare. We've got a kick on the one and. Got a flam on the high tom up here. And we're bolstering that with some kick action down here. Got a mid tom and a back to the snare. Okay, and then we've got 3 tom hits on the 3 and 4 and parts of the bar, and then the cymbal crash. Okay, so it's a little more complex than what we did on the other ones, but let's get into reconstructing it to see how we did it. Okay, so we're doing a little bit of surgery here again. Right, there's our 3 bars, so we're bringing the snare up to the 1. And we're going to create a flam with that. So the way to create a flam is a little flexible here. You can, of course, divide the editing field into 64ths or something like that and be very precise. Drag out a new note. So a flam is technically not considered 2 notes exactly. It's the same note played at slightly different times. So if you drag this front note out too far, it's just going to sound like a double tap on the snare, which might be what you want. But there's nothing wrong with earballing it and just dragging it out until it sounds the way that you want it to sound. We're going to lower that first tap. Depends how you would like the flam to sound. You can accentuate the second hit to make it pop a little more, but I think that's fine for now. I'm going to set the field back to 16. We're going to put a kick on the 1 and then there is a flam on the high tom. On the 2, and then there's another kick on the 2 and. We want these kicks to be about the same velocity. Let's try it at 50 and see how it sounds later. Then we have a double tap on the snare. In this case, because it's the bridge and it's heavier, the toms are heavier, so they stand out. And I think we can make them all the same velocity. We could do something with this snare hit and change the velocity on these. All right, let's hear how that sounds in context. Right, I'm sure you're getting the idea with that. So we can move on to the end of the bridge. Let's go to the end of the bridge and listen again to what our model track is showing us. So what do we have here? We've got a symbol on the 1, and that's to pop up that part of the song. And it's creating a cymbal wash. And then we've got a little bit of a build here. It's very short. And a build means we're going from a low velocity on several notes. So that's the kick, the snare, and the low tom. And then we're ending with a flam on the snare. And you'll notice that's the highest velocity there. So that's going to pop out of that build. And then we've got 2 kicks to fill in the space here, just to keep the momentum going. And then there's a bit of a syncopated hit on the 4 and with the snare and crash. Right, so let's just listen to that part a little more closely. Okay, and the second bar is going from 43 to 44. We've got 2 full bar fills here, so pretty long. So there's a space here, and then we've got a flam, 2 more kicks, and then snare hits to fill it out. All right, so let's try to replicate that. Okay, so we're on bars 42 and 44. So we're just going to, we don't actually have to split these, but let's do it anyway. And we'll turn them into the Hulk and make them greener. There we go. Right, so we're going to the beginning of the first bar. We're going to move the hi-hat to a cymbal crash. And then we have a bit of a build here on the 3, 3 and 4. Right, so I've placed my notes. What I'm going to do is ramp the velocities on these notes. The kicks are going to be the lowest. So I'm starting pretty low there at about 4 and just building up to, 10 or 15. The snares are going to do something similar, but I'm going to leave this one because remember that's our heaviest velocity part of the build. And the low tom can build from a low level as well, but it can be a little higher because the toms don't have the impact that the snare and the kick do. And the more that you ramp these, the more steep the build is, of course, and you don't have to do them all exactly the same. If you want one of those instruments to pop out of the build, you just ramp that at a steeper level so that the ending velocity is more extreme. And if you remember, we had 2 kicks here, but they weren't very heavy. Close to 20, I think, around there. Okay, then we had the crash on the snare and the crash cymbal at 4 and. Just for variety's sake, I'm going to alternate between the left and the right crash here. All right, that should take care of the first bar. Let's listen to it. Okay, so if you remember, we had a flam here. All right, so let's duplicate this flam over here. And we left this open hi-hat. Then we had 2 kicks. And 2 snare hits, I believe. Going to vary the velocity ranges on these. These 2 are quite light because they're just grace notes that lead to the 1 of the next bar. Those are a little too light. Let's bring those up a bit. Just want those to stand out a bit more. And we need this one to be a little louder. All right, let's give it a listen. Okay, and then we have the cymbal crash on the one following it. Okay, so the bridge is sounding as we anticipated, more or less. You'll notice I left these parts unfilled because it was redundant to add more fills to it. I think you guys get the idea, but of course you can put fills wherever you think they are appropriate. The last thing we have to do is add the fill for the finale of the song. So let's get into that. Okay, last but not least, we have the finale or the outro or the extra, whatever you want to call it. And it takes up the last 3 bars of the song. Let's give it a listen and see what we've got coming down the pipe. And the crowd screams. So let's take a look at what we've got here. We've got a flam at the beginning, a flam on the 2, a flam on the 3. We're alternating that with kick hits on the 1 and the 2 and. We're using the cymbals here to create some noise in the background, a cymbal wash. And then we've got a kick pattern here and some tom hits. So that's a flam on the, the mid tom, and a hit on the low tom, and then the cymbal crash. And we also have a retardo happening, and that means we're slowing the tempo down over time. And we're going to look at how to do that, but that is done up here in the automation of the tempo, and we'll look at that in just a minute. Right, let's go back to replicating our beat just so we can see how we did this. So let's first do some surgery on our MIDI regions. Okay, I'm just using those 3, so I'm going to recolor them again. Mind you, you can do all of this surgery ahead of time if you know exactly where you're going to be putting your fills. Okay, let's reconstruct this fill. So we've got a kick on the 1 and, a kick on the 2 and. We've got a flam on the 1 and the 2. You'll notice I'm just eyeballing those. You can be more precise if you like. Want those kicks to be the same velocity. Then we have another flam on the 3 of the bar. Yeah, so I'm just creating a cymbal wash in the background just because it is a bit of a crescendo. Go to about 50. You could ramp these if you really wanted to build it like this. We don't need these ride cymbals here. So we have a flam on the high tom on the 3 and. We've got the mid tom on the 4 and the low tom on the 4 and. All right, so I think you get the idea of how that goes. Let's listen to it and see if it sounds all right. I think it would be nice if this, if the 2 ending toms were a little louder and a little more pronounced. So we'll just do that a bit. Let's deal with the retardo here and see what we did. So what you're looking at here is the tempo automation, which shows up here. And it's this blue line, and you can vary the tempo in a song, which is very handy if your song has multi-tempos. But you can also ramp the tempo up or down, and the tempo will climb in the space as you set it. You create nodes on the timeline where you would like it to begin and to end, and then it'll give you a slider that you can create a bit of a curve, you see, like that. And you can set where you would like the retardo to end, and it will graduate the slowing of the tempo this way. Of course, if this are higher, you can raise the tempo over a period. So this is a 1-bar variation here. So there we go. We have come to the completion of all of our fills, and if you think it's right, and when you get that to the point where you think everything sounds great, you can move on to the mixing part of your project, or you can leave it as it is and just use it as a rough demo. For the mixing section, you may want to separate these into the drums into separate Midi tracks, so you can mix each part of the drum set separately. You have to bounce this down to, or join them into a single Midi section, and you're just going to highlight them all, hit join, and then right-click again, and you go down to Midi, and you can see it says separate by note pitch, and that separates them, all of the different drum parts, into separate tracks. They are grouped at the moment, but you can ungroup them. And there you go. We have created a song from scratch. We've recorded our song, we've laid out the drum tracks, and now we're ready to give it to people and say, hey, listen to my great new song. And you feel comfortable and confident that you have done your best with this. And again, as I've mentioned many times, this is a learning process. There's many things you can learn. If you're interested, there are a few advanced techniques that we're going to finish this course off with. So you might want to move on to that video, and you can find out a few tricks and little things, details to help make your beats come alive. Let's sign off by listening to our new song. Yay, team!